Hi friends, welcome you back to my continued session on Karl Marx as a pioneer or one of the pioneers of sociology. Other two pioneers have been Emile Durkheim from France and Max Weber from Germany. Karl Marx, Emile Durkheim, and Max Weber. All the three together are very important for sociology because they have not only given the specific subject matter for sociology, they have also outlined methodologies to look into this subject matter. Emile Durkheim, for example, has conceived collective representations or collectivity or society as the subject matter of sociology, and to study this he propagated positivism or naturalistic methodology, natural scientific methodology for sociology. Max Weber from Germany conceived individual social action as the subject matter of sociology and gave Western or hermeneutical or interpretative methodology for sociology. Coming to Karl Marx, he was responsible for conceiving economic struggle or revolution or class struggle or economic differentiation as the subject matter of sociology or social sciences, and conceived or continued the dialectic methodology of Hegel in understanding social cultural reality. From Hegel, he took only the dialectic methodology, that is, the methodology of contradiction, conflict, and change. And in the last session, we have elaborately discussed how Marx deviated from Hegel's dialectical idealism and introduced dialectic materialism. For Marx, utmost importance should be given to economy in understanding socio-cultural reality. It is because economy is the foundation on which entire superstructure of life is to be built. In this session, we are first summarizing Marx's ideas on economic interpretation of history. Then we will go to various phases of world history and how dualistic conception of class is found in various phases of history. And then I will deal with the class struggle and conclude this session with alienation as an important concept which leads to unity and integrity of the world workers. Let us first come to Marx's ideas on economic interpretation of history. There are different ways this idea is known. For example, some consider it as materialistic interpretation of history, and some others consider it as economic determinism. But personally, I feel that economic determinism is not the proper usage to understand Marx's idea of historical movement. Economy is one of the many aspects of socio-cultural reality, but he gave due importance to economics. It is economic interpretation of history. And according to Marx, in each epoch of world history, economy or the material aspects of life, very important. What is economy? Economy constitutes material aspect of life. Material aspects refer to what we produce, what we create with the help of our hands and our entire stamina. And what we produce constitute economy, and this economic aspects of society or material aspects of society constitute infrastructure, the foundation, the base. And I think this must have given some people to understand Marx as economic determinist. But he conceived economy as the foundation of society, infrastructure, and the superstructure corresponding to it will be developed in all phases of world history. And what is this economic infrastructure? Marx conceives means of production, relations of production, and mode of production as the infrastructure that make any given world epoch. The world epochs are, in Marx's view, four in number. For example, Asiatic, ancient, the feudal, and the bourgeois. The bourgeois is also known as capitalistic epoch in world history. The Asiatic is not part of European development of European economic development. Asiatic is part of the Asian countries. Marx must have developed his ideas on Asiatic mode of production on the basis of the travelogues available to him at that time and his idea of geography at that time. And whereas he gave only passing interpretation of Asiatic production, in detailed exposition of various economic developments in other three phases of world history, Marx has elaborated clearly. In Asiatic mode of production, not the classes were put into each other. According to him, there the rulers and the subjects constituted two groups in society. Coming to other three, that is ancient, the feudal, and the bourgeois capitalist stage, two classes formulated opponents, and the dualistic interpretation of various parts of epochs of world history Marx developed. Let us go to the dualistic class structure, which are also known as antagonistic class structure prior to capitalism. We are dividing this dualistic class structure into two: the nature of dualistic class structure prior to capitalism and dualistic class structure during capitalism. And come to antagonistic class structure prior to capitalism. All phases of history, in Marx's view, has through two polarized opposing classes. One is haves, another is have-nots. The haves are the owners of production, and have-nots are workers, constitute two classes. The haves have control over all the three: means of production, relations of production, and modes of production in all epochs of history. And in ancient mode of production, there were masters and slaves. And another name for ancient mode of production is slavery. In the feudal mode of production, there are lords and serfs, feudal lords and serfs, where a stratification system by name estate system prevailed. And this is also known as serfdom. Coming to bourgeois mode of production, Marx tells it is characterized by wage earning by laborers, and capitalist owners and workers constitute two classes. And these are three distinct modes of man's exploitation by man. You have to note this. Marx was a humanist in nature, and his interest in economy started to develop after his movement to France, after his brief journalistic career in Germany. He came to Paris, and from there he developed interest in English, British political economy and economics. And also in the year 1844, he read Engel's work on the working condition, the condition of the working class in Europe, and that has moved him. And after that, in 1845, he came into contact with Engels personally, and that relationship continued. And if anybody reads the condition of working class in Europe at that time, it is pathetic and ununderstandable how human beings can go to that extent of exploitation of fellow human beings. Marx and Engels note that entire course of world history is marked by exploitation of one group of human beings by the other, who are very small in number. This is a very interesting idea. In each stage, at the end of each stage's omb, we notice potential for struggle, transformation, and revolution. Potential for revolution. For example, at the end of ancient period, there was utmost disturbance between the slaves and the masters. And at the end of feudal era, serfs and the lords, the dichotomy was too wide that the French Revolution is the culmination of the death knell of serfdom or feudal era. And in the same way, in the capitalistic era also, there will be some potentials for workers to fight against the masters. And each stage has in its own potential for struggle and revolutionary change. And that revolutionary change is because of class struggle. We come across Marx and Engels' ideas on class struggle in their classic work of 1848, a very brief pamphlet it is, written for the Communist Party's party propaganda. It is the Communist Manifesto. And there they have clearly stated what is the importance of class struggle for human history. The opening sentence itself tells that the history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggle. This is a very important base for Marx's theory of class struggle. Class struggle is not unique to one period of history. In all periods of history, there was class struggle, and there will be class struggle in capitalistic stage also. Only one stage, which is yet to come, that is the communist stage, will not have class struggle, because there will not be polarization of classes. There will not be haves and have-nots. There will be only haves. All people of the world will be converted into haves. And therefore, except for the last communist phase of human existence, all phases have their class struggle as their base. And there had been constant opposition and struggle, which always ended up with revolutionary change, according to Marx. And continuing class struggle, we can tell that in the case of the capitalistic regime, all intermediary classes of artisans and specialist workers will be crystallized into the proletaria, or the working class, and there will be only oppressor capitalist owner and oppressed, alienated and pauperized workers. One important idea of Marx and Engels' theory of class is their dualistic conception of class. In all phases of world history, there are only two classes, class of haves and class of have-nots. Those who own the means, relations and mode of production, and those who do not own, and those who own only their labor to certain extent. After some time, they will not have control on their labor also. Their capacity to work also has been surrendered to this capitalistic system. That means even though they cannot work, they have to work. There are inhuman working conditions in such a way that even 8, 12, 16 hours workers are made to work. Those who are not in a position to work, those who have to attend schools and colleges, at the age of 10 only, they have to become workers. That means at the end, workers do not have control on the labor or their stamina also to consider. And there are two types of classes, haves and have-nots. And they are decided on the basis of various types of oppression, exploitation and alienation. In class struggle, ultimately, the workers of the world have to unite and wage a unified battle against the capitalistic system. Marx is against the capitalistic system in general and not the capitalists as individual human beings. And Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto have given a clarion call for all workers of the world to unite and bring in revolution through class struggle. They wrote, "Workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose except the chains which are unchained you." And this is the clarion call given by Marx and Engels in the Communist Manifesto. And in all further works, both of them have elucidated how one can bring about change, the revolution in society. The Marx's idea, dualistic idea of class in all epochs of world history, and his idea of class struggle ends in revolution, and where there will be only haves and no have-nots. All will work according to their capacity and all will get according to their needs. This is a very ideational socialistic conception of a world which is sometimes considered as utopian in nature. I mean utopian in nature. The so-called communist regimes that have come after Marx are not as Marxist as Marx observed. They are not really socialistic at all. On the contrary, they are having lot of capitalistic overtones on them, and therefore many communist societies, communist regimes did not survive, and I should not comment on the one regime that still remains in the world. And in my own personal view, that is not the communist regime, it is the capitalistic communist regime. And I will stop at this juncture relating to class struggle. And next I will be dealing with another important idea on Marx, that is theory of alienation. Precursor to class struggle, class conflict and revolution is a process by which the workers of the world are pauperized and reduced to nothing. And this idea of alienation by Marx and Engels has been developed in the year 1844 economic and philosophical manuscripts. Just like dialectics, even the idea of alienation also Marx and Engels, Marx takes from Hegel. Hegel spoke of alienation or estrangement. Another meaning of alienation is estrangement, means something which we produce, we become separate from that. And in Hegel's idea, we become estranged from the ideas produced by ourselves. And Hegel's was estrangement in the realm of ideas. But Marx has adapted estrangement, alienation in the realm of the working class. And I will give you one small example of what is estrangement to make you understand alienation. If we become separated from certain things with which we are once associated with, and that is estrangement. For example, you take the example of money. We have created money for exchanging our goods and services. And now money has become external to us. And if you step out of your home without keeping any money in your pocket, you cannot live. That means we are alienated from money. And in the same way, so many other aspects of life we are being alienated. That means we have created, but we have no control on that. This is the process of estrangement. And how Marx conceives estrangement in the realm of the material world of production, which emerged in feudal order and continues in the capitalistic order. In the feudal order, for example, the serfs produced lot of agricultural products. And even in the midst of bounty, there is scarcity. There were examples of serfs who did not have enough to eat, though they produced huge quantities of grains. Whatever they produced used to be taken by the feudal lords, and they were not part of the material which they have produced. And therefore, in Marx's opinion, alienation began with the feudal stage and continued with the capitalistic order. And in capitalistic order, Marx conceives 4 types of alienation. Alienation is nothing but some kind of relationship with something which we earlier are associated with. Alienation is an alienated relationship. First one is, in the capitalistic regime, workers are alienated from the product. Whatever they produce, they do not have control on it. They produce for others. Others means the capitalists. And they have no control on what they product, and they are alienated from the very activity of producing. That means they cannot decide how they have to produce. For example, in an agrarian, simple agrarian setup, a person goes to plow in his field, and whenever he is tired, he is the owner of his field and owner of his productive activity. He will stop plowing and comes out, drinks water and takes rest. And this type of control on one's own productive activity is not there in the alienated industrial setup. For example, I have come across some theses on Bangladeshi textile manufacturing factories. In textile manufacturing and in garment manufacturing sewing factories, workers have to work more than 10 hours, and even they are encouraged not to drink water so that they may go to washroom to release. To avoid that, they are allowed not to drink water also. That means worker is not having control on the productive activity, and that results in the third alienation, that is alienation from species activity. Species activity means their own self. That means they should not drink water, which is required for their sustenance. Means they do not have control on one's own self. And at the same time, there are studies of sugarcane cutting laborers in Maharashtra's sugar belt. And in that sugar belt, to work, women go for laparoscopic surgery to stop conceiving. That means if they conceive, they cannot work for 3-4 months, and when after giving delivery also, after delivering a child also, they should remain without working. Therefore, the owners of the sugar plantations and sugar factories encourage women not to have children at all. That means they don't have control on their own reproductive health. Workers also don't have control on their own self. And end result of all this is the death of humanity. They are not related to fellow human beings. Even in the factory, a fellow human being faints and falls and even dies. He cannot attend to him. That means he is alienated from entire human species. And everything in this material world becomes the property of the capitalists. The relations, the culture, God, Almighty, and everybody, anything and everything you conceive is not related to human beings living, but they are owned by the capitalistic entrepreneurs. Dear friends, I have covered in little greater detail dialectical materialism, economic determinism or economic interpretation of history, class struggle, and alienation, the way I could conceive with the help of these following 3 books. For example, Raymond Aron's Main Currents in Sociological Thought, then Marx, Karl, and Engels' Manifesto of the Communist Party in Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, Marx and Engels' Selected Works. And this book, Marx and Engels' Selected Works, contains in it several writings of Marx and Engels in a nutshell. This was published long back in 1968, its first edition, but I am having its sixth edition. And at that time, USSR, United Soviet Republic, was existing. Now it is not existing. And at the time, as propaganda literature, Marx and Engels' ideas were spread across the world for very less money. And then book by Maurice Ken, Marx, Durkheim, and Weber. All the three pioneers are dealt with in greater detail in this textbook. It is highly useful. And you can go through these books from your library. And I am concluding my presentations on Marx's ideas on dialectical materialism, class struggle, economic interpretation of history, and alienation. I dedicate my efforts to present these ideas to the memories of my professor who taught these ideas, Professor K.N. Somaya, late Professor K.N. Somaya, and he was inspirational in helping me in developing interest in theoretical sociology. Of course, he was inspirational. Whatever, if at all there are any shortcomings in my presentations, I alone am responsible for that. Thank you, friends.